In the late 1960s, deep behind the Iron Curtain, something strange was happening. A car rolled off the production line in Poland that looked Italian, drove like a Fiat, but wasn't quite one. It was a symbol of ambition, politics, and survival, all disguised as a family sedan. This was the Polski Fiat 125P, a machine that carried Italy's design with Polish determination. Built not for luxury or fame, but for a dream. The dream of industrial progress in a country struggling to prove itself to the West. But here's the twist. While it proudly wore the Fiat badge, it wasn't the Fiat most people thought it was. Underneath that stylish Italian body was something older, simpler, and slower. Yet this odd mix became a national icon, and even made its way across borders into Western Europe, where it shocked people who never expected to see a Polish-built Fiat parked next to their BMWs and Peugeots. So how did this strange collaboration between communist Poland and capitalist Italy happen? And how did the 125P become both a political statement and a working man's hero? Let's rewind to where it all began, when a struggling nation tried to build its future out of Italian steel. The origins: Fiat's deal with communist Poland. To understand the birth of the Polski Fiat 125P, we have to go back to the mid-1960s, when Poland's post-war economy was desperate for modernization. The communist government wanted to show progress, to prove that Poland could stand tall alongside Western Europe. But there was one problem. Their car industry was outdated, inefficient, and nearly collapsing. At the same time, in Italy, Fiat was looking for new markets and cheap labor. Their cars were dominating Western Europe, but they saw an opportunity in the East, a chance to expand their influence behind the Iron Curtain. In 1965, a deal was struck between Fiat and the Polish government. On paper, it was a technical cooperation agreement. In reality, it was a political gamble. Fiat would supply Poland with the designs, machinery, and know-how to produce a modern family sedan. In return, Poland would handle the manufacturing, under the proud name Polski Fiat. But there was a catch. Fiat didn't give them the latest model. Instead, Poland received a mix of older Fiat parts, mainly from the Fiat 1300 and 1500, dressed in the body of the newer Fiat 125. It was like giving someone a modern suit but filling it with 10-year-old organs. Still, for Poland, this was a breakthrough. For the first time, they had access to Western technology, assembly lines, and international credibility. The car would be built at the FSO, Fabryka Samochodów Osobowych, plant in Warsaw, the same factory that had been producing outdated Soviet-style cars. The first Polski Fiat 125P rolled off the line in 1967, and despite being slower and less refined than its Italian cousin, it became an instant symbol of pride. People didn't care that it wasn't truly new. It represented something bigger, a bridge between East and West, a sign that Poland could compete on a global stage, even under the shadow of the Soviet Union. But soon, the excitement would fade, because while the car looked Italian, it had to survive in a world that was anything but glamorous. The design that fooled the world. At first glance, the Polski Fiat 125P looked like a car straight out of Milan: sharp lines, clean proportions, and that unmistakable Italian confidence. It carried the same body design as the Fiat 125, a car that in Western Europe was considered stylish and modern. But beneath that handsome exterior, the Polish version told a completely different story. While the Italian Fiat 125 used a more advanced twin-cam engine and modern suspension, the Polish-built 125P relied on older technology, a simple, pushrod engine borrowed from the Fiat 1300 and 1500, along with a less sophisticated chassis. To the untrained eye, the two cars looked identical, but once you open the hood, it became clear that the 125P was built more for durability than speed. Still, that was exactly what Poland needed. The 125P wasn't meant to win races. It was meant to survive harsh winters, rough roads, and a shortage of spare parts. Its simplicity made it reparable in almost any garage, and its tough steel body earned it a reputation for being nearly indestructible. Even Western buyers took notice. Fiat exported the car under names like FSO 1300 and FSO 1500, selling them in the UK, Denmark, and even Egypt. British reviewers called it a strange mix of old and new, an Italian body with the heart of a workhorse. Some mocked it for being slow and outdated, but others admired its honesty. It was a car that didn't pretend to be more than it was. Inside, things were humble. The dashboard was simple, the materials were basic, and the build quality depended entirely on the day's production mood. Yet in its home country, the 125P was seen as a luxury item. Owning one meant you were successful, connected, or simply lucky enough to get one through the state's long waiting lists. But the most surprising part? This Polish-built Fiat wasn't just a local curiosity. It became a quiet export success. And that unexpected popularity would soon turn the humble 125P into a political symbol far bigger than anyone imagined. Exporting a communist car to the West. It sounds unbelievable now, but during the Cold War, a Polish-built car wearing a Fiat badge was being sold in the heart of capitalist Europe. While most products from behind the Iron Curtain were shunned or mocked, the Polski Fiat 125P managed to slip through the cracks, finding its way onto roads in Britain, Denmark, and even the Middle East.
How?
Through one of the strangest trade deals of its time. Fiat had agreed that Poland could use their design and technology, but in return, part of the production would be sold abroad to bring in much-needed foreign currency. For the Polish government, these exports were gold. Every car sold in the West meant dollars, and dollars meant survival for a struggling socialist economy. In the UK, it was marketed simply as the FSO 1300 or FSO 1500. Advertisements proudly claimed it was built under license from Fiat, a clever way of saying, yes, it's Polish, but it's still Italian at heart. Western buyers were intrigued. Here was a full-sized European sedan for the price of a tiny Austin Mini. But of course, there was a catch. Many buyers soon realized that while the 125P looked like a Fiat, it didn't feel like one. The steering was heavy, the acceleration sluggish, and the fit and finish far from Italian standards. Yet, for the price, it was hard to complain. The car became a hit with taxi drivers, families, and budget-conscious motorists who wanted something reliable and easy to fix. Even more impressive, the 125P earned a reputation for being nearly unkillable. It could handle rough terrain, freezing winters, and thousands of miles with minimal maintenance. Some British owners even said it was built like a tank, a compliment that Polish workers wore with pride. But with growing demand came a problem. The West was starting to see Poland not just as a producer of cheap labor, but as a serious player in the car industry. And that kind of attention during the height of the Cold War was something both sides of Europe didn't quite know how to handle. Because behind every 125P exported to the West, there was a story of politics, pride, and survival. And soon, that story would take a darker turn. The political symbolism and hidden struggles behind the 125P. The Polski Fiat 125P wasn't just a car, it was a statement. In the eyes of Poland's communist government, it represented progress, independence, and proof that the country could stand toe-to-toe with Western industry. Every time one rolled off the assembly line, it was treated almost like a national victory. But behind the propaganda posters and smiling factory workers, reality was far less glamorous. Production at the FSO plant in Warsaw was plagued with shortages of materials, of tools, and of motivation. Workers had to fight for spare parts, deal with constant power cuts, and often relied on improvisation just to keep the line moving. Some cars left the factory missing parts or with sloppy finishes, but nobody dared to slow down. The state demanded numbers, not perfection. And yet, people loved the 125P. It wasn't just transportation, it was freedom. In a time when few could travel abroad, owning a car meant you could escape, even if only for a weekend drive into the countryside. It symbolized stability, achievement, and pride in a system that gave people few chances to feel accomplished. Still, that symbolism cut both ways. The 125P also became a reminder of everything the communist regime promised but couldn't deliver: modernity, equality, and a better life. When Western TV showed glamorous Fiat 125s speeding through Italy, Polish viewers saw what their own version could have been. And as the years went on, the differences grew even starker. The Polish model barely evolved, while Western cars kept advancing with new engines, safety systems, and designs. By the late 1970s, the 125P was starting to feel like a relic. But here's where the story turns fascinating. Instead of fading away, the 125P somehow survived. It became a car of the people, used by police forces, taxi drivers, government officials, and families alike. It was in movies, parades, and even protests. In a strange way, it unified the nation, a shared symbol of pride, frustration, and resilience all at once. And when political tensions in Poland began boiling over in the 1980s, the humble 125P was right there in the middle of it all. The fall, the legacy, and how the 125P refused to die. By the 1980s, the world had moved on, but Poland's roads were still filled with the boxy silhouettes of the Polski Fiat 125P. The car had become a veteran of the streets, a survivor of decades of political upheaval and economic struggle. But its age was showing. New models from the West were faster, smoother, and packed with technology the 125P could only dream of. Even within Poland, the car's design was becoming outdated. Workers knew it, drivers knew it, and even the government couldn't deny it anymore. But replacing it wasn't easy. Developing a new car required money, technology, and international cooperation, things that were in short supply behind the Iron Curtain. So, the 125P kept going, year after year, with minor facelifts and modest updates. By now, it had outlived the original Fiat 125 it was based on by more than a decade. For some, that was proof of its reliability. For others, it was a sign of stagnation. Yet somehow, the car remained beloved. It wasn't about performance anymore. It was about identity. When the Solidarity movement rose up in the 1980s, demanding change and freedom, the 125P became part of the scenery of rebellion. It carried protesters, journalists, and workers through the chaos. It stood parked outside factories during strikes, symbolizing the working class who built it, and who were now demanding more than just a car to be proud of. By the late 1980s, as communism began to collapse across Eastern Europe, production of the 125P finally began winding down. In 1991, after more than 1.4 million units built, the last one rolled off the line. But even as it disappeared from showrooms, it refused to fade from memory. Across Poland, the 125P became a nostalgic icon, the car of childhoods, road trips, and long waits on the state's car list. It was the backdrop of an era, the sound of an engine that marked both hope and hardship. And decades later, enthusiasts still restore them, proud to keep the story alive. Because the 125P wasn't just a car, it was a survivor of two worlds. Born from a deal between Italy and Poland, shaped by politics, and kept alive by the hands of ordinary people. It bridged East and West, capitalism and communism, ambition and reality. And even today, when one passes by on a quiet Polish street, its boxy shape reminds everyone of a time when a simple Fiat badge carried the weight of an entire nation's dreams. The story of the Polski Fiat 125P is more than just about metal, engines, or design. It's about people. It's the story of a nation that wanted to move forward, even when the world around it seemed determined to hold it back. Born from compromise, the 125P became something greater than anyone expected, a bridge between two opposing worlds. To Italy, it was a business deal.
To Poland, it was a lifeline.
And to millions of families, it was the car that carried their hopes, memories, and dreams through decades of change. It wasn't fast. It wasn't perfect. But it was theirs. And for a country that had spent years borrowing ideas from abroad, the 125P proved that Poland could build something lasting, something that would outlive the system that created it. Even today, restored 125PS still cruise through Polish cities, proudly wearing the same badge that once symbolized a complicated alliance. It's a quiet reminder of an era when every journey, no matter how small, was a victory. Because in the end, the Polski Fiat 125P didn't just move people. It moved a nation. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of Eastern Europe's most unexpected automotive legends, make sure to like, subscribe, and ring the bell, because here at Gear Ghosts, We bring forgotten machines back to life, one story at a time.